Hello, it's me, Tet again, for Unit 10. This time it's influential animations, and we're asked to look at 5 artists, which are Walt Disney, Aardman Animations, Jan Svankmajer, Tim Burton, and Terry Gilliam. We're also asked to research the techniques they've used in the animations, um, and then discover what animations they have made, like popular ones. We're also asked to investigate about FPS, frames per second, but I'll look at that later on. So for now, let's look at Walt Disney. Right, now for Walt Disney. Walt Disney was founded in 1923 by animator Walt Disney. He created many animations, excuse me, but his most popular and at the time groundbreaking was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, released in the late 1930s. He then founded Walt Disney Studios in California, Florida with the profits from Snow White, the same studio that they use today. He died in 1966 of lung cancer, but the studio still continues to make films. They have films such as Robin Hood, Alice in Wonderland, and Dumbo to name a few of the most popular cel animation films. This is where the cartoon is drawn entirely by hand. In recent years, Disney has shifted to CGI, with films like Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., Toy Story, and others. CGI is where the images are generated using computers. So, now let's look at Aardman Animations. Now we're going to look at Aardman. Aardman uses the stop motion technique mostly. This is a great time to explain about FPS. Basically, frames per second means every picture is a frame. Maybe you need 3 frames in 1 second in order to make it look right for that second, which is where frames per second comes into it. Later on in the video I'll explain it into more detail, so don't worry if you don't understand. Last year we did a stop motion project and I was team leader and we had the theme Tim Burton. I can definitely see the advantages and disadvantages of stop motion, including the fact that we had control fully over everything. What happened, we created the characters, we did everything in that little world that we were taking pictures in. The only problem was that if anything went wrong in the slightest, you'd have to start again. Aardman have a lot to alter the name for their success. They are the creators of things like you may have heard of Wallace and Gromit. They also paved the way for characters like Morph. Another one of the great creations was Shaun the Sheep. They also achieved the world's smallest and biggest animations. Dot was their smallest animation ever, and Gulp was their biggest, which were real milestones in the company. However, they have signed a deal to produce 3D CGI with Sony. This deal started in 2007 and expired in 2010, where it was then renewed up until 2013, and this year it will be renewed again, I think. With the deal with Sony, it allowed them to create CGIs like Flushed Away, which was their first piece, and that's all for Aardman. I am now going to look at Jan Svankmajer. Now it's time to look at Jan Svankmajer. Jan Svankmajer is a surreal animator from Czechoslovakia. Last year we watched some videos he made during our stop motion project. This includes the food video, which was a stop motion, real life video. The surreal thing about it was it only contained 2 sound effects, and that was it through the entire film. This was the sound of coins being dropped, and the other one I can't remember. He won the Golden Persistence of Vision Award, an award for animators who work outside the box of usual filmmaking. This has definitely got to be said for Svankmajer. He also did an Alice in Wonderland video, but he doesn't like to call himself an animated filmmaker because he thinks animators close themselves away in their own little worlds. We will now look at Tim Burton. Now we're going to look at Tim Burton. Tim Burton is a very dark animator, to say the least. He was a stop motion claymation. Claymation is basically stop motion with clay, like Wallace and Gromit. His films like Frankenweenie and Nightmare Before Christmas are praised for their excellent use of claymation and stop motion. Tim Burton also worked on live action films like Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, and Edward Scissorhands. We, last year in our stop motion group, as I was discussing earlier, had Tim Burton as our theme. My girlfriend is obsessed with this animator, and last year in our group, she was a great help. She just knew so much that I didn't, as I tend to stray away from darker films like what Tim Burton produces. But that's not to say he doesn't have a huge fan base, which he does. I am now going to look at the final animator, Terry Gilliam, who is from the Monty Python, and is also a strip cartoonist. Now I'm going to look at Terry Gilliam. Gilliam. Oh, something. Terry Gilliam started his career as a strip cartoonist. Despite his awkward name, he devised a very clever DIY animation show. Basically, he taught you how to become a strip cartoonist, which at the time of the show must have been a very popular hobby or thing at the time. A good way to compare it to young people like myself would be to compare it to Art Attack, a do-it-yourself. Like, he'd show you the cartoons, how he made them there and then, and just how easy it was to put stuff together. He also did most of Monty Python's animations, because Terry Gilliam was also a Python. He was the only American Python. He worked on films such as Miracle of Flight, one of his own, and he also did animations for Monty Python films like Flying Circus. He's now a very famous director in Hollywood. And this is what we are doing in Unit 10 this year. Strip cartoons. We got a flipped classroom, which is where we are given work over the weekend in order to do our lesson on Monday. All we have to do is devise a story for a strip cartoon and also cut out some pictures and backgrounds to go with it. Now we're working in groups, but individually we still have to bring in our own things, such as stories and pictures, which is a little confusing at the minute, but I'm sure all will become clear as time goes on. I'm now going to explain frames per second, which I looked at earlier in the admin section. It's not too difficult to understand. Frames per second relates to how many frames you want in that second. Each picture you take for stop motion is a frame. 3 frames per second means I'm going to have 3 pictures in that 1 second of footage. This may be because I want it to be more fluent, the video, how people see it, persistence of vision, but really I think that frames per second I'd like to use around about 5 maybe. But that's where the problem comes in here. That means, well, I'll get onto the puzzle first. We're given a maths question in a lecture. Not a difficult one. I'm not good at maths, but I aced it. 3 times 10 is 30, isn't it? Let's say you have 3 frames per second. You want 10 seconds of footage. So the 3 frames you're having for every second, times that by 10. Eventually you have 30 seconds of footage. Sorry, 30 pictures in your 10 seconds of footage. This is an easy way to devise how many pictures you're going to have to take. So for example, if you wanted to do what I said earlier, which is 5 frames per second, and I want 20 seconds of footage, I would need 100 pictures. I would need to take 100 pictures, which is where you really have to think about it. And that's all I think, so thank you for watching again. It's been nice. So they're on, innit?